Vice President Joe Biden, or as I call him, America's uncle, gave us a really sober, serious moment in his speech at the DNC. Let's watch.
No major party nominee in the history of this nation has ever known less or has been less prepared to deal with our national security. We cannot elect a man who exploits our fears of ISIS and other terrorists, who has no plan whatsoever to make us safer. A man who embraces the tactics of our enemies, torture, religious intolerance. You all know, all the Republicans know, that's not who we are. It betrays our values. It alienates those who we need in the fight against ISIS. Donald Trump, with all his rhetoric, would literally make us less safe. We cannot elect a man who belittles our closest allies while embracing dictators like Vladimir Putin. No, I mean it. A man who seeks to sow division in America for his own gain and disorder around the world. A man who confuses bluster with strength. We simply cannot let that happen as Americans. Period.
Again, that's a very, very strong line of attack. I think that line of attack is super effective. And Joe Biden did this recently. He gave a speech recently at some event. I forget what the event was. And he swung a shovel at Trump's face there, too. And he said, look, some of these things, they're just not debatable. He says things that are not on the table. You know, like, for example, he said, wouldn't it be great if we go back and see, remember the whole Judge Curiel scandal where Trump said, I think he should recuse himself. Why? He's Mexican. So, and then when he was pressed on that, Trump said something along the lines of, wouldn't it be great if I become elected and then we come back and see Judge Curiel? Whoa. Because then you're talking about a guy who's threatening the independence of the judiciary. I mean, that's the most American thing ever, to have checks and balances, to have a system where you can have the court do a judicial review, for example. They can hold the executive branch accountable. Here you have a guy who's like, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be cute if I get elected and then we go back and we visit Judge Curiel? I mean, that's him saying, in other words, you think I give a fuck about checks and balances? I don't give a shit about checks and balances. Yeah, I'm gonna go after him. And Joe Biden was giving a speech and saying, okay, this isn't a thing. Like, this is off the table. I don't care how much you dislike Hillary Clinton and how terrible you think she is. And believe me, anybody who watches the show, they know I think she's terrible. It's shit like this that makes Donald Trump the worst one. Hillary would be the lesser of two evils. He's worse because he says shit like this and it doesn't even register like, oh, this may be an issue. No, he thinks, well, like, you know, he's a toddler who wants to control everybody, and he thinks that when he becomes president, he becomes dictator. So Biden ripped his face off for that, and now he's ripping his face off for this, and this really puts things in perspective because what he's saying is, guys, Trump is letting you know that he's going to be a fascist. Like, it's one thing in history, and this has happened repeatedly, usually when authoritarians rise to power, they don't fucking tell you they're going to be authoritarian. Why? Because then they wouldn't get elected. So Hitler got 43% of the vote. He got a plurality, and he actually was elected. Now, obviously, he did the power grab later. But bottom line is, usually when there's some sort of authoritarian leader, there is some rising through the ranks and gaining popularity. But when that's happening, they never say, oh, by the way, I will be an authoritarian strongman. I will be a fascist. I am going to do all things that we universally agree are immoral. I'm going to kill civilians. I'm going to torture people. Nobody ever says that when they're trying to become popular, because that doesn't make you popular. Any normal group of people with a functioning moral code goes, ooh. But with Trump, it's on another level, because he tells you up front, hey, I'm going to torture people. Hey, I'm going to ban all Muslims. I'm going to kill civilians. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kill civilians. We have to take out their families. When I slowed down the clip, you guys saw it in my terrorist on end. We have to take out their families. When he was pressed on that later on, he doubled down. He doubled down. He said the Geneva Conventions is, quote, the problem. Article out earlier today. He doubled down on that too. He says, look, that's the issue. It's outdated. What do you mean? It's outdated. No, it's not. It's not outdated at all. It says shit like, don't kill civilians. That's not outdated. That doesn't need a fucking rewrite. But he's like, well, I mean, it kind of does, because when I kill civilians, I want that to be legal. Totally legal. Not okay. Not okay. And Joe Biden really puts that in perspective, because he comes up there and he says, this isn't an issue. Like, he's so far beyond the pale that if you consider him based on everything he said, think about how history will judge us. Seriously. So if we elect him and then he just goes on to do all the shit that he says he's going to do, how would history judge us? I mean, we're already rightly being judged harshly for the Bush years, for example. Yes, even many things that happened under the Obama years. No question about it. But there is a fundamental difference between somebody who's telling you, I'm going to torture, and then they torture. George W. Bush tried to hide it. So at least on some level he knew, like, yeah, what we're doing is not right. Well, I guess do it anyway. Trump's like, no, I'm going to torture. And somebody who says, no, I'm going to kill their civilians on purpose. Now, I've made the case before, manslaughter versus murder. So under Obama, yes, we've killed so many civilians with drones and airstrikes and stuff. And we've done it repeatedly. So it's manslaughter that happens repeatedly. That is totally unacceptable. But the level of moral culpability is below that of somebody who says, I am going to go in there and kill civilians on purpose. That matches ISIS. That's what ISIS wants to do. And that's another point that Joe Biden made. This guy who wants to copy the tactics of our worst enemies, which means he wants to betray American values because he doesn't believe in those values across the board. He believes in them for the other guy, and he believes in them when they're convenient. When they're inconvenient, we get to copy ISIS tactics, and everybody shut the fuck up, because when we do it, it's okay. We kill civilians hunky-dory, they kill civilians fucking terrorists. This is the way that he thinks. And this is a guy who, he's not, if you don't know the difference between Hamas and Hezbollah, and Trump didn't in the middle of the campaign season, I'm going to have to disqualify you. That's not that difficult. That's not that hard. Knowing the difference between Hamas and Hezbollah is kind of important if you're going to be president of the United States. You might not know the difference. You're not running for president of the United States. Knowing the difference between the Kurds and the Quds Force, you need that to be president. This guy, and you know what he responded, right? When this happened in the Hugh Hewitt radio interview. He said, I don't know it now, but when I get elected, I'll know it so well. I'll know it better than anybody else. It'll make your head spin. Dude, this is like a bad joke at this point. So, you know what it is? Everybody rightly is... We feel a certain way about this election because the Democratic candidate is so abysmal. And I'm not downplaying that fact. That's totally true. I lead the charge in pointing out how abysmal she is. Voted for the Iraq War, voted for the Patriot Act, was in favor of outsourcing, all these different things. Was in favor of deregulation, is too cozy with Wall Street, all those things. Totally true. So because Hillary's so bad, I think a lot of people, maybe at times including myself too, we downplay the disaster that Trump could be. But we do that at our own peril. Because, like I said, there's something fundamentally different between somebody who makes horrific decisions, but would largely continue the status quo, and somebody who would actively take you in the wrong direction, and somebody who tells you up front, I am going to torture people, I am going to kill civilians. I don't believe in international law, I don't believe in the Geneva Conventions. When we do it, it's okay. And Joe Biden said it, the most important point, dude, that makes us less safe. You think Donald Trump, law and order candidate, is going to protect us. He makes you less safe. For every person that's tortured, for every person that's extrajudicially held, for every civilian that's killed, you create probably more than 100 more new jihadists and enemies of the United States. That's not the direction you want to go in, because that's not the direction any sane person wants to go in. So keep that in mind, and I think Joe Biden made a fantastic case here. And this is what I was waiting for earlier on in the week. Earlier on in the week, it was nothing but wall-to-wall rainbows and puppies, and everything is great at the Democratic convention. Yesterday, we finally got some people going, yeah, no, I'm going to disembowel you, Donald Trump. And that's what a lot of them did on stage, including Joe Biden.